Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this next summer school lecture. We're delighted to welcome along Steve Gaskin tonight, who's going to talk about psychopaths in business. We are privileged to have Steve along. He's an ex-DCI of the Met. He was there for 25 years, and he's investigated all kinds of serious crime, including murder, terrorism, and serious drugs trafficking. We're also very pleased that Steve and his wife, Kate, are teaching 2 courses at this year's summer school. There are places still left available on Inside the Mind of a Murderer, an adult course, and Crime Scene Detectives, which Kate's taking for our teenagers. Now, we're recording tonight's Zoom lecture. We have to tell you this for GDPR purposes. Also, if everyone can take their camera off, that would be great. Steve will be able to answer some questions at the end, and please ask your questions using the chat function at the bottom of the screen. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Steve. Steve, it's over to you.
Great. Well, thanks very much, John, for that very, very kind welcome. We're just going to get on with it. It's great to see you guys, and can I just say a big thank you. It's the hottest day of the year, and you've come along to this talk. So it's great to see you, and welcome to Psychopaths in Business. So welcome to Psychopaths in Business. Kate, can you just give me a thumbs up, make sure the tech's all okay? Brilliant. Okay, so a warm welcome to, and it is a warm welcome, and thanks for giving up, as I say, the hottest day of the year or the evening to come along and listen to this. I need to correct John just slightly. This is not a full-blown lecture. It's interactive. You can do as little or as much as you like. You can sit back. If you want to interact, that'd be terrific. This is all about you guys and just furthering what you already know about psychopaths. And if you don't know too much, maybe I can add to that knowledge. So just to tell you who I am, my name is Steve Gaskin, and I had the absolute privilege of being a DCI in the Metropolitan Police Service. For those of you who don't know, that's as high as you can go operationally as a detective. Probably could have gone further in rank, but that's where you still have hands-on. And I was what's known as an SIO in my latter years. In other words, I was competent to investigate the most serious offence, murder. I'm currently the advisor to BBC Silent Witness. I'm a criminal psychologist, and I lecture at a number of places, including in the summer, Marlborough College. And I'm very, very proudly a lecturer at City University, where my single-minded goal is to try and enthuse young minds through lecturing, and hopefully for them to get a good job. So some of the cases that I've been involved in was the Sultan of Brunei, who was being blackmailed a number of years ago, one of the richest men in the world. And mercifully, we were able to get an undercover officer in there to spare his blushes at court. Years ago, I got involved in a character called Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. He tried to remove my head with a ceremonial sword, and fortunately, he missed. The most distressing scene that I've been called to was the Hyde Park bombing, way back in the 80s, and I was first on scene to that. What's interesting is I joined the police service to be something other than a career detective, but as a young PC, I got involved when I was on work experience with the CRD. I got involved in a serial killer called Archibald Hall, who was a butler in Knightsbridge, and he killed 5 of his charges. So that is basically why I became a career detective. Furthermore, halfway through my service, I got a scholarship encouraged by Kate, who is helping me this evening, and I read forensic psychology with mathematics. So what are we going to do this evening? What are we going to do? Some of this is tongue-in-cheek, some of it is good fun, others isn't, but at the end of the day, what I want you to do is to be able to spot a psychopath, and if necessary, avoid the psychopath. So the objectives is what is a psychopath? If you are an ologist, a psychologist, a sociologist, a criminologist, you will know that we can't agree on anything. So you're going to have to excuse the definition that I've given. And we're here to look at psychopaths in business. And I think with a lot of criminal psychology, people are very interested in the why. Yeah, in the why. Why do people do things? And then I'm going to give you the opportunity to measure your own psychopathy. Are you a psychopath? Can I just tell you that that is absolutely confidential to you, but there is always someone that puts the answers into the chat box. So far as my intellectual property is concerned, I have no objections when we get to looking at this instrument to you actually taking a copy of that to use that in the future. We're then going to look at something called the dark triad, and that is really almost a little life skill that I want to give you so you can weigh someone up fairly quickly. And then what we'll do is if you've been interested by this, what I'll do is to hopefully stimulate your mind further by looking at conclusions and some recommended reading. So a lot of people, when they think of psychopaths, Hannibal Lecter, if you've seen that film, I'm going to have to stop using this. Typically, from Silence of the Lamb, typically springs to mind. Criminal psychologist, a criminal psychopath. The literature, so far as criminal psychopaths, is very, very well documented. There are books and books. But what there isn't so much of is looking at psychopaths in business who can equally cause as much damage in some cases as people being sent to prison and finding out or then being adjudged to be a psychopath. So they can cause as much collateral damage. But equally, on the other side of the coin, it doesn't mean necessarily if you're a psychopath, you're going to break the law. You're going to have a look at some of the variables. I mean, you may be asking yourself now, am I a psychopath? Well, you've got to measure yourself on a continuum of 12 traits or variables that we'll have a look later. So within the framework of clinical psychology, a psychopath is someone with personality traits, which includes egocentricity. If you don't take anything else away this evening, this is probably the hallmark of a psychopath. And I'd like you to just indulge me and maybe in the future just carry out this exercise, particularly as we're coming out of lockdown. When you see someone you haven't seen for a long time, and that's lots of us, ask them how they are, and then measure either hypothetically or by a stopwatch or something, how long does it take them to ask you about you and yours, your family, your work, your hobbies, your sports, your habits. So included within some of these are charm, charisma. Now, look at all of these. None of these are criminal. Charm, charisma, fearlessness, ruthlessness, narcissism, persuasiveness, and a lack of conscience. Well, there can be some criminality around that. So that is a basic definition. Now, what I'd like you to do now is to have a quick look at this. This is for a purpose. It's a diagram here, one of these confounded diagrams. And what I want you to do is to have a look at that and then drop into the chat box what you think it is. And I may give you a clue a bit later on. Kate, I can't actually see the chat box, so if anyone gets it, just pitch in and tell me that they've got it, because you know exactly what it is.
No one's got it yet.
Right, that's good. That's good. This is actually quite good, guys. The reason I've put this in, as will unfold later, is that psychopaths are very, very attuned to their environment, and they are very, very attuned to you, looking for any possible way of exploiting your good nature. So the reason why I've put this in is that psychopaths would get this immediately. So if you haven't got it, that's quite good news. So what I'm going to do now, if you haven't got it, I'm going to give you a clue. It is a baby farmyard animal, and you must be thinking, I'm going to click off this lecture now, because what on earth is he talking about? But some of you will get it. The lights will go on. It's a baby farmyard animal. Anyone got it yet, Kate?
And we've only got a piglet so far.
A piglet. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, guys, because I do want to move on so we can get right into the...
Anna's just got it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well done. It's a calf. This is how you must forgive my terrible drawing here, but those are the ears. There's the nose. There are the eyes. Yeah. And there's the nose. So that is a calf. So moving on from that, the last one I want to show you is this, is what do you see now? How many circles do you see?
Pop it in the chat box when you think you know.
Okay, guys, I'm going to go through it. So has anyone got it, Kate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. There's 17 circles. I've particularly drawn your attention to this circle here. And there is another one just here. Yeah, can you see that one on this wooden panel? One, and so on. So there's 17 altogether. So as I say, these guys will definitely, oh, this is good, I've got the chat box now. These guys will are very, very attuned to their environment and to humankind. So let's move on from that. If you look really at the gurus, those that are mainly in the literature around psychopaths and business, it's Dr. Hare and Dr. Hare, husband and wife team, who have produced 3 different psychopathy checklists. The first one is a revised one, and that is really for general psychopathy. The second one is the shortened version, and in my opinion, it should be used more by HR departments. The only trouble is you have to be a chartered psychologist to administer this, and unfortunately, there ain't too many of those around as HR directors. And thirdly, there is a one for youth. So what it takes into, it takes into consideration 12 traits or variables that change, that make up the metabolism of a psychopath. It includes antisocial personality disorder, and it tests before the person was aged 15 and then after 18. And it takes into consideration, and when I look at this antisocial personality disorder before 15, I fit a lot of the criteria, or I did, truanting from school, being rude to your parents or swearing at your parents. I didn't do that, I dare not. My father was a police constable, and other small, and it might be minor thefts. It might be running away from home. So that is also put on the continuum or measurement. Now, the different traits, I can tell you what they are, but I think it's more, you get more out of these lectures if you drop into the chat box what you think they are. Now, I've got some of my VIP true crime community members on here. If you drop in what those traits are, I will boot you out of our community. So what do you think those traits are? We've talked about egocentricity. Just drop into the chat box. There's 12 altogether. And then what we'll do is we'll unpack one or two of them. Ha. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Awesome, guys. Thanks for interacting. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, very, very good. I've alluded to some of them. Yeah, narcissist, that is kind of true, but right towards the end, I'm going to show you a model that builds on psychopathy. One of them is Machiavellianism and the other one is narcissism. But this is good. Belief that you were right. Manipulative. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, spot on, spot on. Charm. Okay, so let's look at them. So impulsive. Am I impulsive? Absolutely. And I'll give you a stupid example today. I wanted to make an asparagus soup. So I had like an hour to go before this thing. I know this is a silly example. So on impulse, I rushed off, come home and I cooked it. Am I a psychopath on that one? Probably not. Egocentric. Well, there's an interesting, we haven't got time to go into it. There is actually a correlation between egocentricity and extrovertism, but we haven't got time to go into that. But when by learning and conditioning, as I went into the police service as an introvert, came out the training school as an extrovert. Shallow emotion. Yeah, shallow emotion. Give you an example of that is I taught a guy some mathematics that had failed. His mother was quite seriously ill and it didn't bother him in the slightest. He was also a liar, and when I went out of the room, I set him some questions. I could see him peeping at the answers at the back. He is now one of the most successful sales directors of a large chain of hotels. Very, very charming. Lacking empathy. Guys, I won't show you, but I've got my 4-month-old golden retriever sitting by my side at the moment. And if something happened to him, I'd be gutted. But some people are quite happy to harm animals or see them. So that is actually part of the test. Lacking guilt. In legal speak, that is called mens rea. Yeah, mens rea, lacking guilt. And you have to prove that for theft-derived offences and indeed murder. I'll give you an example, is that I was dancing around City University lecture theatre talking about, I think it was offender profiling, and I dropped 20 quid. You know, these plastic ones came out of my pocket and hit the floor. And this young undergrad said, Steve, you just dropped 20 quid. Psychopaths see that as my problem, not the fact that they see my problem. That's the problem. You dropped it, I'll pick it up. It's your problem. You shouldn't have dropped it. Cold-heartedness. There is you might be surprised by this, most psychopaths, it's an innate function. And cold-heartedness there is the only one that, in my humble view, is somewhat environmental. And that does start often with childhood. You can see the dangers of that is that our special forces are taught to kill on demand. Let's be open about that. But you can see the dangers of that about maybe de-rolling when they come back into Civvy Street. Superficially charming. Well, I've met thousands of people, and so have you, that are superficially charming, and as soon as your back's turned, they will be running you down. Persuasive. I'm not going to talk about criminal psychopaths at all, and there's a reason for that. But one of the most prolific criminal psychopaths that went off the scale was Harold Shipman. I don't know whether you guys know, but he was actually disbarred by the General Medical Council for stealing people's pethidine prescriptions. So persuasive was he after 2 years that he was admitted back into general practice. How bad must those people have felt that admitted him back in again? And this is the integral difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, is the incapacity to love. And akin to that is the feeling that humans are inanimate objects. Yeah, hope we learn from Shipman. I work for the NHS. We haven't got time to do that, but my view is that there's still not enough safeguards. Although we challenge, don't we? We challenge GPs and doctors more since that. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Forgive all of this is a very busy slide, and I'm going to go through it briefly. If you look at two intersecting circles in the middle there, where psychopaths and sociopaths carry the same traits, they regularly break or flout the law, they constantly lie and deceive others. So just take this one this evening, ladies and gents, is that what I would say to you is, if you're trying to spot a psychopath at work, that is one of the things, again, that's very simple. Are they lying and deceiving others? And that's just the police alone. No, I don't mean that. Is impulsive and doesn't plan ahead. They do things on the spur of the moment. And that was Jack the Ripper. He was very impulsive. Can be prone to fighting and aggressiveness, doesn't feel remorse or guilt. Irresponsible, can't meet financial obligations. And that's what brings in the criminal side, and has got little regard for the safety of others. So let's just focus in on here. So it's nature as opposed to nurture. In other words, you're born like it, as opposed to it being something in the environment as you're growing up. People are seen as pawns. They tend to be better educated than sociopaths. Charming, carefully planned crimes, popular culture. Look at Dexter or James Bond. Let's look at that clinically. He's a misogynist who goes around murdering people, although I'm looking forward to the next film. Sociopath nature, tend to be more erratic, often able to form a long-term relationship, as opposed to these guys that can't. Predisposed to violent outbursts. Criminal enterprise tends to be largely unplanned. And there is a lot in offender profiling to look at all the surrounding circumstances with planned and unplanned serious crimes. It tells you a whole lot. In the popular culture, they're a joker. Okay. Just so you know, this is really good. You can get this online. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The reason I put that in there is if you look up that sociopathic and psychopathic behavior does not go in there as a mental disorder. Look at this, if you will. I love this. This is the leader. You are all in business. You have a leader, good or bad. Kate and I, on the other side of our business, we teach leadership. We love it. We revel in it. Look at this. If you had a boss like this, what do you think of, in this case, it's a he, could equally be a her. He is a charismatic leader who inspires people to follow him, a strategic thinker who can master the details, a tireless worker with incredible focus and problem-solving skills. Sounds good to me. He's well liked by his employees, but he's also able to make and execute unpopular decisions. And finally, above all, he's an exceptional communicator who can convey a vision to any audience, from Wall Street to the most junior employee. Just imagine at your annual appraisal, or whatever you call it, you got that, you'd be delighted, wouldn't you? This, unfortunately, has come from a law enforcement official who was bound by secrecy not to reveal who this person was. I'm not going to say who it is, but this has got a striking similarity. And when this quote came out, was at the time when Jordan Pelfall, the Wolf of Wall Street, was arrested. So you can look at that yourselves. So isn't that interesting? So this is the deceit of psychopaths, the lies and the deceit. So this is what we're here for. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a broad look at applying psychopathy to business skills, and then we'll have a look at a more narrow view. There's a lovely question that's just come in here. Kate, can you make sure that I answer that at the end from Vera? A very good one. So this may or may not surprise you. CEOs between 3 to 21% are probably psychopaths. That's in Forbes magazine fairly recently. Shallow emotions, lacking empathy, cold-heartedness. Now, Kate and I run a big business, and all the time I'm checking my behavior. Do I lack empathy with members of staff? Do I lack empathy with clients? Am I cold-hearted? Hopefully not. The norm in the population in Britain for psychopaths, that is where they hit most of the variables, is just 1%. So it's not a lot. And in prison, it's 15%. But look at the correlation between prisons and what Forbes say. So it's quite high, isn't it? Unsurprisingly in prisons, but maybe surprisingly with CEOs. Now, surgeons, can I just tell you, I'm going to bore you with my ailments. I just had a few years ago my knee replaced. The surgeon was a raging psychopath. I was delighted because I didn't want him in an operating theatre thinking, oh my God, I'm going to muck up this knee. I didn't want him to think about me. I wanted him to think about putting in that aluminium joint or whatever it is. As it happens, he did a cracking job. So in my view, their feelings aren't fit for purpose in a operating theatre. Special forces, we've mentioned those, there's obvious dangers with that. Police officers, Kate will agree to me, I met many psychopathic police officers, but where they're useful, look at a traffic accident where there's a multiple pile-up. You don't want a police officer flapping, do you? You want them to be clinically concentrating on what they're required to do. Of course, you can be empathetic, but it's quite useful to have that sort of officer. Sales, guys, the psychology of sales is something that I will never put down. It intrigues me. We had a woman working for us that was the most superficially charming salesperson, used to hit salesperson of the week, of the month all the time, and she was a raging psychopath in business. Brilliant salesperson. So just here, there's two reasons why if you're an employer, you might want to actually employ psychopaths. So let's get a bit more clinical now. Let's just start having a look. Let's start having a look at what makes a psychopath. This sounds like academic gobbledygook, doesn't it? It's a complex interaction between biological, temperamental predispositions and social forces. It is a complex composition of environmental factors, social forces. It's also a combination of looking at biologically that a lot of people are born as psychopaths, and you need to look at more biological psychology to flesh that out. Adult psychopaths can have their formative roots traced back to their childhood, e.g. early years trauma. Can I just tell you something, as a criminal psychologist, it is hugely dangerous to try and explain why someone has murdered, whether that be a single one or a serial killing, to look for some trigger in their past that may account for them committing murder. It is far more complex than that, but not so with psychopaths. Both men and women psychopaths commit more violent crimes than other criminals. And yes, the answer is that there are more male criminal psychopaths than there are female, but also as a statistician you may say, well, actually far more men are convicted than females. They don't technically break the law if you think about it, but they can cause other collateral damage, such as social, economic, physical, and psychological harm in companies and firms. This is the, do you know, I thought for one nasty moment I'd spelt behaviour incorrectly. I've done this quite a few times. This is my top 10. This is it's really like an eclectic model. I've looked at what other people have said. I've looked at my own experience. And when we were in the police service, we used to have a passion, the police service, for laminated cards. You go through everything and say, yes, yes, yes. So look at these, and this really is some outward signs. Greed is good. Yeah, we have moved, haven't we, to this model here where, and I've got to say, Sir Richard Branson started bringing around this catalytic change in business. He wrote a book called Screw Business as Usual, and the whole idea is having a culture of philanthropy right at the epicenter of your business. Pushing the law or social norms to the limit, and self-advancement by any means at their disposal. You know, they don't care who they wreck on their way up. Parasitic, they will study you very, very carefully. And if they see a weakness or any innocence, they will exploit you. They're power crazy. They have a destructive personality. They will hijack meetings. You know, if I could see all your faces now, I'm sure I would see people smiling about people hijacking meetings. We've all seen it, haven't we? Takes advantage of stressors found in all walks of business life. They will stir that up. They will use that as a psychological weapon, particularly if they're in a middle management position. They will abuse co-workers, and they have excessive egocentricity. So I'm going to look at how do you, we know it, don't you? How do you inoculate yourself against psychopaths? A bit like, you know, we've been through the jabs that we've had for COVID. So actually, I'm going to come to this in the end. Now, we need to do this quite quickly. This is where I will allow you to take a photograph of this. This is where you're going to measure your own psychopathy. This is not my work. It's someone that we know, Kate and I know quite well, Professor Kevin Dutton. He's written a marvelous book called The Wisdom of Psychopathy, of Psychopaths. So what I want you to do is this. Let's take, I love this one here, especially with my wife watching. He or she, question number 2, thinks cheating on your partner is okay, so long as they don't get caught. I don't want you to tick the box. If you disagree strongly with that, put 0, 1, 2, and 3. So don't do a tick box. And then what I want you to do is just to come to a cumulative total, add everything up. So you get a score out of 33. So what I will do is I will stop to take breath, and I will give you, do take a photograph of this because we do need to move on. But what I will do is the next slide will bring some rationality to that. What does this all mean? Good. That's one of the reasons I've asked you to, apart from what I should have said, is the reason I've put he or she. I've used that is that if you then want to use this measurement instrument to measure your partner, someone at work, then these he or she is kind of interchangeable. Okay, I'm going to. Can you just drop a Y into the chat box, please, if you've finished? Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the bandings of these now. Basically, Kevin Dutton on his website is measuring this all the time, and he's asking people to put in things like gender, age, what business you're in, ethnicity, and everything to start getting a sort of broader picture. So what do these results mean? There he is, Hannibal Lector. What do they mean? So what do these results mean? First of all, if you've scored, and do feel free to take do feel free to take a photograph of this slide. If it's 0 to 10, that is little or no psychopathic tendencies. If you then move on from that, you then move up to this other class interval here, 11 to 20, the person exhibits some demonstrable psychopathic tendencies, such as egocentricity and cold-heartedness. This would be the people that you see at a party or family gathering, but it's a really interesting exercise. 21 to 30, we're moving right up the scale here. The person exhibits a whole cluster of psychopathic tendencies, and these mostly manifested by verbal and physical behavior, exactly the same as Harold Shipman. He was actually known by his peers as Dr. Know-It-All. And he used to have lots of bouts of ill temper. If you've scored here, this person or someone else is exhibiting psychopathic dominance. Yeah, they're superficially charming but shallow, care little for other people, and are dominated by extreme egocentricity. And if you've measured your partner that, move out and Kate will supply you with a travel lodge, or if you're on a senior management team, a more grandiose hotel. But do feel free to take a picture of that. So there is some triviality around what we've done, but nevertheless very, very important and a good measuring instrument. So self-defense, how do you defend yourself? I love this little diagram here, or watercolor there. It's a snake in a suit, a snake in a suit. How do you defend yourself or protect yourself? So this is my top 10. 1, understand the nature of psychopaths. That's what we've spent the last 35 minutes or so understanding superficially. Know yourself. Know yourself. Psychopaths feed on what they perceive as naivety and innocence. How much do you reveal about yourself? How much do you reveal about your inner self? How much do you show your hand to people? That's entirely up to you, but do know yourself. What is your utility to a psychopath? Are they after you for information, communication, influence, or authority? Are they going to steal some of your good work at work and pass it off as their own to get promoted? Because they will do that. I worked in Her Majesty's Prison Service doing some consultancy, and someone nicked my particular idea, and that guy was a psychopath. Didn't particularly bother me, but there we go. Guard against preying on your generosity, your trusting nature, or sense of charity. That could be a non-psychopath, of course, but those are some things there that you can be on your guard. And finally, asked this question, and this is, ladies and gents, what I want you to remember. What does this person really want from me? Are we asking that question to depths? I use that for scams. Some of these scams are brilliant, you know, take me in, but what does this person really want from me? If they're ruthless, if they don't care about other people, they don't care about me. So do ask that question. We're going to finish off with this, and we've talked about psychopathy, and that's what I'm here to talk about. But there are two other rings that can be attached to it, where it's behavior akin to psychopathic behavior. Machiavellianism, named after the Italian politician, and narcissism. And if you look at the variables there for psychopathy, you can see impulsive, emotionally cold, remorseless. The body language, inappropriate or lack of emotional expression. Good poker players, you can't tell what's going on. Machiavellianism there, they are manipulative. They will do anything they can to get where they want to be. And he was a politician. Is there any analogies to any fairly recent politicians? You may ask yourself. Body language, dominant, expansive posture. Yeah. Narcissism is grandiosity, perceived superiority, entitlement, and their body language is first person pronouns all the time, focus on self in conversation. So this has not been around very long. Psychopathy is the darkest, but is the less harmful out of the three. None of these traits are defined as mental illness, and these are the guys that designed this and came up with this. And so just really I'm quite pleased actually, for me, I've actually kept on time, but just really some reflective conclusions. And it's something I thought quite deeply about last week when I was preparing this, is given this knowledge, who do you know who is exhibiting psychopathic traits at work? It might not be destructive, but is it destructive? Secondly, what is the single factor in your view that is common to all psychopaths, whether they're criminal or, as we've been focusing on business? How could psychopathic behavior be seen as a positive at work, not at home? So these are just really some introspective questions that you can ask yourself at a later time. And this is something that I think has actually got legs. I think it would be quite interesting to see if speech pattern software could be used to analyze words and detect psychopathic behavior. Because there is a thing called the flesh test, where you can run a test over the syllables, sentences, paragraphs, and over time that can tell you the intelligence of the person, and they can correlate it to different papers that are read in the United Kingdom. So the higher intelligent you are, you're more likely to be reading the Guardian, the Times, the Telegraph. But I don't know whether you know, guys, the most read newspaper in the United Kingdom is The Sun. A final thought, guys, this is a beautiful picture by Vincent van Gogh. It's Starry Night, which I find beautiful and quite soporific, but it shows me that we all think and we all act, and in his case, we all paint in different ways. You know, he's shown these beautiful stars in his perception. We all have different perceptions. We all come from different environments, and we all act differently. So I just want to skip over that for a sec, because there's something else I want to show you before I take some questions. Where is it? Yeah, these are the books. I always like finishing off a gig. There's 31 of these that we do online, that we do either live or online, but these are quite cool. Snakes in Suits is, I suppose, the Bible by Dr. Hare, because you can see him there, and he's collaborated with someone else. Kevin Dutton's book is very, very good. and he's actually partnered with Andy McNabb from the Special Air Service, from the Bravo 20. There it is. There it is, The Good Psychopath's Guide to Success. And this guy, who I'm sharing a stage with, never met, later this year, Christopher Berry D, talking with psychopaths and savages. Just before we do finish, and I said to John, and I'm very grateful for Marlborough College allowing me to do this, is I'm running a course looking at the whole picture of why do people commit serial murders, and we're going to run it over 5 sessions at Marlborough College. So it's an introduction to criminal psychology, then looking at the psychology of aggression and violence, offender profiling, which will blow you away. It's becoming more and more scientific. It's looking at the psychological markers left at crime scenes and the holistic picture, not just the forensics, but everything else. We're then going to look at the nature of British serial killers. And my pet topic is victimology. Why do serial killers go for a particular victim or homogenous group? Personality types, and then we're going to have a bit of fun on the Friday by carrying out a full murder investigation. We run a VIP true crime group where we put on different talks. Once a year we have a conference, we have a true crime conference. We send out stuff in the post, fingerprint kits, the sort of things that we do. It's a paid service, it's £15 a month. We do murdered and missing, all of these things. And coming up in June, for instance, is we're doing Virtually Killed, a crime scene investigation. Inside Broadmoor, we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at offender profiling. And we're going to repeat the Anti-Corruption Command, looking at an investigation into police corruption. When I say we, it means you, actually, because Kate and I will marshal these, but it's down to you. And our website is thecrimelab.co.uk. So I'm now going to finish sharing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing so I can see myself, and I'd be delighted to take questions. And I think probably there's a lot of us about tonight, so I'm going to we've got 15 minutes. Yeah, we've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to try and field as many as I can. Okay, there was one earlier on that came from Vera, which I liked the look of, but I was just in my in the middle of delivering this.
Could Vera unmute herself, please? And
yeah, Vera, can you unmute yourself? It's a lovely question I saw.
The camera on.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, sorry, I will not put the camera on, but I'm happy to unmute myself. I was asking, why is it that so many people are attracted to psychopaths, that you would think, you know, from an evolution perspective, we would be wired to avoid these people, but it's very often quite the opposite. Yeah.
One of the this chap that I was telling you about, this tutee that I had, that is now a prolific and very successful salesperson. He was very, very superficially charming. So if you look on the crust there, which was fairly deep, people are attracted. He's very good looking, and a lot of psychopathic serial killers. Ted Bundy, for instance, was very, very good looking. Some research one of my mates did at university was looking at serial killers and taking away their names and then asking different gender groups to put them into attractiveness. So it is the superficially charming bit that people are drawn into them. And that is very prevalent at the moment with scams, male on female. In other words, males hooking females in and exploiting them for money. And they are very, very plausible. And the analogy I'll give you is that You know, we are ex-Scotland Yard detectives, and we've been taken for money over the website. You know, even with checking and checking and checking, we had some money defrauded from us. So even though you take precautions, people are attracted to these people. You can see that Dr. Hare has said very much so that you know, they superficially charming is one of the main traits. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
That's okay.
Steve,
Yep.
there's a couple of really good comments in the chat box. Can you see them? One was from Craig. Craig Madden, do you want to comment?
Yeah.
If you want to turn the cameras on, please
Right.
do.
Yeah. So Craig, brilliant question. I have to be very careful here because I don't want to be sued. I'll go as far as I dare. Do companies actively recruit psychopaths, and why? Okay. There are some insurance companies that I know that I've spoken to, and when I speak to them, it's quite obvious the people on the other end are psychopaths. They're not interested in you, and what they will do is they will try everything to minimize your claim. They are superficially charming, but at the end of the day, all they want to do is to climb that ladder to get that commission payment on top of their salary, without dealing with you. If it happens that, you know, a small percentage goes to the ombudsman, the insurance ombudsman, or the financial services authority, they don't care. But
Nick,
I do know of one company, but I'm not willing to say because he with his airline will sue me.
Nick has said about her sister's written a book. Can you see that
Sleeping
question?
with a Psychopath, just published, interesting, explaining right how she was conned out. I had no knowledge of that, Nick, at all. What I would like to do though is, Nick, if you'd be kind enough to email me, team@thecrimelab.co.uk, I'll be delighted to read that. Yeah. So Fiona, thinking about politicians, even when these tendencies have been revealed by the media, why do people fall in behind them and vote for them? Yeah, great question. Great question. Let me answer this. During the Second World War, a psychoanalyst from the RAF here and from the United States did some offender profiling, looking at trying to predict the behavior of Adolf Hitler. It was so good looking at being able to determine how a politician's behavior was going to be in the future that it was kept secret. And last year, the notices or whatever the government do were taken off, and the papers went through to Cambridge University. And I was all over that like a rash, as you can imagine. I've taken that and I managed to get the son of the guy that wrote the profile in the United States. And unsurprisingly, I've studied it and I'm doing a talk on it. So it's charismatic, isn't it? It's charisma. Now, I am quite apolitical these days. You can see, can't you? And look at if you forget about a dictatorship, because the most prolific serial killer ever was Chairman Mao. There's no doubt about that. But Hitler had that charisma. That's what he had, and that's why everyone fell in line. But the thing is if you look these days, it's quite easy these days to get power. I could have got power. I was asked by a political party to be the police and crime commissioner for Norfolk. I had no interest in that at all. But I could rally, because of the people I know, and what I do is I could have rallied a lot of people around me, and then exhibit, if I was a psychopath, I could get up to a lot of mischievous behavior and probably get away with that. Even if psychopaths break the law, the chances are that they're going to get a lesser sentence at court, because it's not going to be criminal psychopaths, different story. But in business, if they're breaking health and safety, they don't care about health and safety. They're likely to get a much lesser sentence. But it is really charisma that will get people to stack up against them. Yeah. Or, you know, in simple terms, the the hatred, not hatred, or the alternative of voting for another party. And I have to be careful not to get too political. So
There's two really good questions now, one from Sarah McCarthy and another one from Craig.
Yeah. Do you think there is a tendency in popular culture to idolize psychopaths and their values, James Bond, successful bankers? Very, very much so. And, you know, Kate and I pulled the plug, but we very nearly went on the Dragon's Den. You know, the Dragon's Den is the Dragon's Den, but, you know, we could have, people start idolizing that, don't they? There's all this virtual reality stuff where people aspire to stuff. There is also the very dangerous and tenuous area about watching violent TV programs or violent video games or snuff movies. Does that necessarily lead to violent behavior or violent outbursts? The jury is still out on that.
There's also the impact of influencers, the rise of influencers and
Yeah.
bloggers and things.
Yeah, yeah. But I think, Sarah, it's a great question. Yes, people do tend to follow them. And also, people tend to get divorced from trivia, reality and fiction, don't they? I think there's a bit of a blurring there that's going on. Yeah. So I gather, Craig, another question, I gather psychopaths tend to work alone for their goals, but do any join forces for their common goals? Not that I'm aware of, that's not to say, but if you look at their traits, they have an incapacity to form relationships. And there was a guy called Peter Manuel, and he was, again, a very, if you get the chance, go and have a look at him. I think he was a very, very good looking guy. He could not form relationships at all, and he was an absolute loner. There were women in the 50s, he was the last person to be executed in Scotland, by the way. There were women that loved him and wanted to go out with him. What did he do? He murdered them because he couldn't form that relationship. So they tend to be loners. They do tend to be loners. It's egocentricity. It's all about them. And at work, how do I get to the top? How do I extract as much money out of this business? And that's contrary to what JFK said. Don't think about what the country can do for you. Think about what you can do for the country. So the answer is no, they tend not to. So I think I can see John now coming back into the frame. So brilliant. Yeah, Fiona, I loved that. That was Martin Compston called In Plain Sight. Now, I forgot to say, on my website, there's, if you go to the website /resources, Kate, can you put that into the chat box? Some of the documents and some of the things that I've spoken about, I've done a paper on Harold Shipman, and those resources are free. They're there for you to look at. Now, I'm going to, there's a bit of acquiescence or acknowledgement from Vera there from husband James. I like your idea of automatically assessing employee language from psychopathic tendencies, but I'm concerned about our privacy, of course. That shows me that you're not a psychopath because you want to adhere by the rules and you're concerned about people. We monitor all Microsoft Teams metadata, but running content through a machine learning classifier would likely lead to many false positives, especially on the trading floor. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Serpent, someone's talked about that. Yeah. And this is the last question from Sarah. Do a lot of people with psychopathic traits form superficial relationships that other believes are real to keep it up? Appearances, killers being married. Yes, they do. Yeah, very much so. So my last comment is please look at the Marlborough School. You know, I'd love you to come along to Inside the Mind of a Murderer, or Kate is doing something with young people, but it's not just me. I'm not egocentric, am I, John? There's a whole raft of cracking courses. Marlborough College Summer School has been going on for years, and there's something for everyone. Something I saw there actually on drawing that I might do at some stage. So thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you, Kate, for monitoring the chat box, and John and Rachel, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to over 30 people on the hottest day of the year.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, Kate. That was a fascinating talk. And join us next time, probably in about 3 or so weeks' time, for another Zoom lecture. And you can see Steve and Kate at summer school doing Crime Scene Detectives. That's Kate's course, and Inside the Mind of a Murderer, which is run by Steve. So I wish you a very good evening, and we look forward to seeing you all at summer school in July. Okay, night, take care.
Good night.
Bye.